Let me ask you guys a question. And I know the answer from a lot of you. You've made it very clear, but not everybody, and I'd like to hear from everybody. Can Pierre Poilievre overperform in the polls? Because the aggregate just dropped today with it being Sunday, and it shows the Liberals are up by 5% on the aggregate. And by the way, this also includes Ecos and Liaison, which there are major, major questions about their polling method. Or their motivations, put it that way. So it shows a 5-point lead, but is it really? And not only that, if young men decide to show up more than they ever have, and it looks like there is more enthusiasm with young men to vote, this number could go from 38 to 45 and maybe even higher. If young men show up to vote. 18 to 40-year-old men, traditionally, they don't get polled very much? Well, it's because they don't vote very much. So turnout is very, very important for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. Okay, so we'll go down. We'll just check out the rest here. I mean, if this happens, what a disgusting looking map. Red everywhere. I don't see it happening, but I guess we'll see. 99% chance. Now, you know what's funny about this? 338 Canada odds of winning the most seats. I dare 338 Canada to put those odds live. I'm sure they would need to get some sort of a betting license, but get your betting license, go through the process, and make it possible for people to bet on those odds. You would see this 99% go down really quick. These aren't really the actual odds, and we know that because they don't want to place bets on it. They know they'd lose their ass. Based off of this percentage, if you put $10 on Pierre Poilievre, you'd win 1,000. Right? He's essentially getting 100 to 1 odds. He has more than 100 of 1 chance to winning. Come on. They shouldn't be putting out percentages if you're not willing to place bets on them. And again, the company who has been allows people to place bets on them. They got it for 69% right now for Mark Carney. Now, it's still higher than Pierre Poilievre, but that being said, there's been a dip in the past 24 hours. Maybe because there's been another scandal. Check out my video from earlier today where I covered the exposure of the Liberal Party trying to influence political opinion by dropping Stop the Steal buttons at a conservative, not a rally, but a conservative conference. Yeah, they really did that, and they got caught. And then all of a sudden, you're seeing a dip and a spike for Pierre Poilievre. Now, will this continue? Who knows? We are also entering debate week. That's also going to affect some things, right? I think that Pierre Poilievre is going to destroy Mark Carney. I think most of you agree with that. But there's also something else I want to show you. There's a new poll from Main Street Research, April 10 to 12th. I believe they just dropped this today. It's from the Real Albanian Pat, and he's a pretty good poll aggregate. His site, Poilievre, is very good. It's very easy to read. And he actually doesn't include Ecos, so I think he's a little bit more based than 338, in my opinion. But the new Main Street poll actually has the Conservatives surging by multiple percentage points. Either up 3%, Liberals are down. Now, is this just is this temporary, or is this Pierre Poilievre surging ahead in the polls? I made videos suggesting that he has before, and then all of a sudden polls come out saying he's dropped. But there also could be a lot of manipulation with polls. There could be corruption involved, money. Every time there's money involved, there's always corruption. We all know that. Unless you're a liberal. But that being said, if this is a trend going into the debate week, when especially during the French debate, Mark Carney is probably going to make a fool of himself. Maybe not. Maybe he surprises us. But he's got to go up against Yves Blanchet, Jagmeet Singh, who's probably pissed off he's losing a bunch of supporters, and Pierre Poilievre, who's trying to become the next prime minister. And considering he can barely speak English without umming and ahhing, how's he going to do in French? Especially if Pierre and Jagmeet and Yves are all speaking quickly using big words that Mark Carney is going to have to try to decipher really quickly. And then the next thing you know, he's going to be umming and ahhing in French. Could that affect the Liberal vote in Quebec? I think it could. I think a lot of people could start going over to the Bloc, who right now, according to Main Street, is only at 3.5%. That number could easily shoot back up to 7 to 8, and it's going to come at the expense of the Liberals, which means they would shoot down back to the high 30s. Interesting. So again, I have to ask, is this a trend? And if this stays close, if it's really tight going into Election Day, can the Conservatives outperform these polling numbers? And again, I think turnout matters the most. Who is the Liberals' biggest voting bloc? Older women. Who votes the most? Older women. They show up, guys. So if you're a young man and you're thinking, I don't really know, just understand that your mothers, your aunts, your grandparents, not all, of course. I don't want to make this, I'm saying generally speaking. There are lots of you who are older women who follow my channel who are absolutely voting Conservative. I personally have aunts who are voting Conservative. And they live in Atlantic Canada, which is, again, pretty liberal. So it's not everyone. I'm not trying to say all boomers are bad or anything like that. But generally speaking, older women vote more than young men. They're also more liberal than young men, especially these days. Young men get polled the least, well, they vote the least. You even see the pleb going around at Pierre Poilievre's rallies, and he's asking these blue-collar young men, and you could even go more specific than young men, it's young blue-collar men who, if they show up, will overwhelmingly vote Conservative. We hear from these folks all the time, and they're pissed off. They think they're losing their country, and I think they're right. So if they can show up, if this whole, well, the Conservatives are just the same as the Liberals, which I understand, but in this case, in the situation that we are in now, if you're of the opinion that Pierre is just the same as a Liberal, well, if he is lying about everything and actually turns out to be that way, then yeah, you're right, we got a big problem. But it's only a maybe, and I would say not very likely. I think that Pierre is actually going to hold true to a lot of his promises, and at least fix things fiscally, and stop the crime wave that's happening, keeping hard criminals in jail where they belong. Well, that right there is better than Trudeau and Carney. I do think Pierre's going to build houses. I do think he's going to pause mass immigration. Now, does he do that for a little bit and then change his mind? Who knows? So maybe if Pierre gets in, we're still screwed anyway. However, to counter that argument, what I would say to you, if you think that Liberals and the Conservatives are the exactly same in 2025, is that we know that Liberals are evil. We know Trudeau and Carney are trying to destroy this place. We know that for a fact, unless you're Liberal. Look at what's happened the past 10 years. Everything that sucks has gotten worse. You can't blame the Conservatives for that. Well, what about Doug Ford? Yeah, that guy is about as liberal as you can get. He's Conservative by name only. He agreed with everything that Justin Trudeau did during COVID. Everything. Conservative my ass. That's why he won in Ontario, because he panders to the Liberals too much. Now, you can also make an argument that, well, the Conservatives in Canada aren't really conservative, full stop. Yeah, you're kind of right. Maxime Bernier makes that point all the time. But they can't be. Canada's too liberal of a country. For example, if Pierre Poilievre said anything about changing abortion laws, he's cooked. You would see a liberal wave like you've never seen before. That's how liberal Canada is. And I'm not going to get into my opinion on abortion, whatever. But the Conservatives cannot change it. They can't even try. Right? Now, Conservatives traditionally would be against the certain abortion laws that we have. But I digress. If the Conservatives in a very liberal country touch that issue, they're done. So they have to kind of pander a little bit to the socially liberal crowd, because there's too many of them in Canada for the Conservatives to win if they don't. So to Maxime Bernier's point, yeah, they kind of have to be a little bit liberal, so that kind of freaks people out and makes people think that Pierre's the same as Trudeau or Carney, but he's not. I used to think that the Liberals, Conservatives, who cares, it's all the same, they're all warmongers, they're all this, they're all that, and I used to be right. But now that my opinion on that has changed, one party, according to Klaus Schwab, has been infiltrated by the WEF and clearly by the CCP. Can't say that about the Conservatives. Yes, they used to be involved in the WEF, even Max. But they left once they saw what was going on. Well, good, they corrected their mistake. The Liberals still haven't done it. The Conservatives are not infiltrated by globalists. The liberals are. Young men know this, and it's pissing them off. They're very motivated these days, where back when I was 18, 19, 20, I didn't care either. But as you get older, generally, you start to care more about politics. Well, young men today, because they're so disenfranchised and they're so hopeless, and because they hear stories from their fathers or their grandfathers about, well, back in my day, I could work, like in the 70s, you could work for $5, $6 an hour and easily afford a decent life. And it's like, well, I can go to high school and make 4 times that, but I'm paying 10 times more in rent than you guys were. So the math doesn't add up. They don't have the same opportunities. And when you grow up without same opportunities, or better opportunities than the previous generation, which is how this is supposed to work, right? Everyone's supposed to do a little bit better than their parents. That's progress. That's not what's happening. So the so-called progressive politics on the left, it's bullshit. There's nothing progressive about it. It's the opposite. And generally speaking, when liberals say something, the opposite is true. How can you say it's progressive when the birth rate is collapsing? When it's progressive, but yet there's more homelessness than there ever, at least recently, in recent history, there's more homelessness than there's ever been. Homeless encampments, needles everywhere. That's not progression. I didn't have to deal with that growing up, but these kids do. And as they get older, especially the COVID kids, just wait until you see the 2029 and 2033 elections. Young people are going to be more conservative than ever. Unless Pierre Poilievre goes back on his promises, and that's where Max Bernier's opportunity is. But that's too far away to even think about right now. We got an election coming up in about 2 weeks. And if conservatives don't get at least a minority, and even then it's still rough, they need a majority here, in my opinion. And then we need to hold them accountable to make sure that we stay a free and sovereign country. Because if the liberals get in, they're going to start censoring people. The carbon tax is going to come back. It's going to be higher than ever. Full-on trade war with the United States, while obeying to China at the same time. I do not like the idea of having a prime minister who owes the Bank of China, aka the Bank of Communism, $250 million for a company he's not even the CEO of anymore. So if you know young men who are thinking, I don't know, I'm not going to vote, especially young blue-collared men, those are the ones who are going to make the difference. Again, are all blue-collared young men going to vote conservative? No, but overwhelmingly they will, just like how older women will overwhelmingly vote liberal. Not all, but most of them will. So you got to kind of counter that. And you got to be enthusiastic, and you got to show up. And it's going to be really telling on April 28th when we're all in line waiting to vote. Just look around. Do you see a bunch of young blue-collar men? If you do, that's a great sign. If you don't, we're in trouble. More than most people think. But let me know what you guys think. Please don't be shy. I really want to know what you think about the polling information. Can Pierre Poilievre outperform the polls? And will young blue-collared men show up? Please also don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really helps grow the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back shortly with a new video.